Well, it finally happened. The Supreme Court has spoken after months of chaos and legal battles. On November 20th, 2025, the court struck down former President Trump's sweeping global tariffs. This wasn't a minor tweak, it was a constitutional earthquake. The decision sent shockwaves from Washington, D.C. to every business struggling under these sudden taxes. The ruling reaffirmed a core principle. Congress, not the president, controls the nation's purse. Tariffs might sound boring, but this was about whether one person could make everything you buy more expensive. The Supreme Court's decision in Learning Resources versus Trump was a crucial moment for American democracy. It was the legal system telling the executive branch, stay in your lane. The saga began in early 2025, when the Trump administration launched a trade war with nearly every country, citing a vague national emergency. Massive taxes hit imports from all over the world, throwing global supply chains into chaos. The policy promised prosperity but delivered confusion and higher bills. Now the government faces the monumental task of refunding over $100 billion to importers. For businesses, it's relief mixed with uncertainty. For the government, a logistical nightmare. And for future presidents, a warning. The Constitution's rules have real consequences. This is the story of how a bad idea became a worse policy, and how the system, just barely, corrected itself. How did we get here? It started with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, from 1977. This law lets the president regulate international commerce during a true national emergency, not as a shortcut to fix trade deficits. In February 2025, the Trump administration used EPA to target China, Mexico, and Canada, citing drug trafficking as the emergency. Then, on April 2nd, the president declared the U.S. trade deficit itself an extraordinary threat, expanding tariffs to over 100 countries. Suddenly, everything from Swiss chocolate to Canadian lumber was hit with taxes up to 50%. The administration used a law meant for national security to impose a massive, unilateral tax hike. But tariffs are taxes, and the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to tax. The administration argued these were regulations, not taxes, a creative but unconvincing claim. American businesses and consumers paid the price. The move was unprecedented, using a law meant to limit presidential power as a tool to expand it. The stage was set for a massive constitutional battle. Lawsuits erupted almost immediately after Liberation Day. Leading the charge was Learning Resources, a U.S. toy seller suddenly facing a $14 million tariff bill, 7 times higher than the year before. For them, this was an existential threat, not a political debate. Over 200 Democratic members of Congress joined the lawsuit, but so did Republicans like Senator Lisa Murkowski. This was about separation of powers, not partisanship. State attorneys general, major corporations, small businesses, and trade associations all united against the tariffs. Their argument: the president cannot invent new taxes, and IEEPA never mentions tariffs or duties. If Congress wanted to give the president the power to tax trillions in trade, it would have said so. The administration's actions, they argued, violated the Constitution's separation of powers. Stories like Cooperative Coffees, a small co-op forced to pay an extra $1.3 million in tariffs, put a human face on the damage. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about livelihoods threatened by reckless policy. The battle lines were drawn, and the case began its journey through the courts. Ma-A's Learning Resources v. Trump moved through the courts. The core question was simple: are these tariffs regulation or taxes? The administration insisted they were regulatory tools under IEEPA, necessary for economic threats. The opposition argued, if it looks, acts, and costs like a tax, it's a tax. They invoked the non-delegation doctrine. Congress can't hand off its core powers, especially the power to tax. The U.S. International Court of Trade unanimously ruled the tariffs illegal. The Federal Circuit Court upheld that decision. 2 courts, multiple judges, same conclusion: the tariffs were unconstitutional. Yet the tariffs stayed in place, pending a Supreme Court appeal. At the Supreme Court, justices from both sides of the spectrum expressed deep skepticism. The administration's arguments were crumbling under scrutiny. On November 20th, the Supreme Court delivered a decisive blow. The global tariffs were unconstitutional. In a 6-3 decision, Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the power to tax is Congress's, not the president's. The ruling emphasized separation of powers. Congress makes the laws, not the executive. The court applied the major questions doctrine for issues of vast economic impact. Congress must speak clearly. The IEEPA was silent on tariffs. The court refused to assume Congress gave away such power. The majority included both conservative and liberal justices, showing this was about constitutional principle, not politics. The ruling wasn't about whether tariffs are good or bad policy. It was about who gets to decide. The answer: Congress, the branch most accountable to the people. The decision was a firm reassertion of the rule of law. The executive branch had overreached and the court drew the line. While lawyers argued in D.C., families and businesses paid the price. The Tax Foundation estimated the tariffs cost the average American household about $1,000 in 2025. That's money lost to higher prices on everything from electronics to groceries. Small businesses like Chocolat Camille Block faced a 39% tariff, wiping out profits just to stay in the U.S. market. Across industries, companies had to choose between raising prices, taking on debt, or laying off workers. The economic projections were grim. If the tariffs stayed, the U.S. could lose over 400,000 jobs. For learning resources, a $14 million tariff bill meant tough choices. Often jobs and growth were the first casualties. Retail prices on imports jumped, hitting lower and middle-income families hardest. The tariffs acted as a hidden tax on everyday life. The policy meant to liberate the economy ended up shackling businesses and families with debt and higher costs. The Supreme Court's decision was a lifeline for those paying the price. It was a victory for the rule of law and for the people. The damage was real, but the correction mattered. Now, the government faces a massive problem: refunding over $100 billion collected from importers. This isn't a simple process. Millions of claims must be processed, and it will take years. U.S. Customs and Border Protection faces a mountain of paperwork and likely more litigation. For businesses, refunds can't come soon enough. They need to pay down debts and rebuild. But recovery will be slow, and most refunds will go toward repair, not price cuts for consumers. The economic damage was instant. The recovery will be gradual. This is a stark reminder. You can't just erase the consequences of a misguided policy overnight. The Great Refund headache is the final chapter in a costly mistake. The Supreme Court's ruling redraws the limits of presidential power on trade. No future president can use IEEPA to impose sweeping tariffs by declaring a trade deficit emergency. If a president wants major tariffs, they must get Congress's approval. Presidents still have limited tools for trade action, but these require clear justification and process. The era of vague emergency declarations as a blank check is over. This ruling is a powerful affirmation of the separation of powers. The power to tax must remain with the legislative branch, accountable to the people. The story of the 2025 tariffs is a cautionary tale about the cost of sidestepping the Constitution. The Supreme Court's decision is a crucial course correction, a reminder that the rule of law is stronger than any single leader. In these chaotic times, that's a lesson worth remembering.